You are not who you think you are, and neither is anyone else. Carl Jung believed that every person walks around with a mask, and behind that mask, a monster. Not an evil one, a forgotten one. And until you confront it, it controls your life. Welcome to the theory that explains why most people never truly exist. Most people think darkness means danger, evil, something to fear. But Carl Jung saw darkness differently. He didn't believe the most terrifying things were outside of us. He believed they were within. He called it the shadow, a psychological truth so powerful that most people spend their lives trying to avoid it. But avoiding it doesn't erase it. In fact, it makes it stronger. The shadow isn't a villain. It's not your enemy. It's every part of yourself you've rejected, hidden, or tried to forget. It's your jealousy, your selfishness, your rage, your desire for control. But it's also your assertiveness, your ambition, your need to be seen. The shadow is not evil. It's exiled. And what we exile eventually returns in ways we can't control. Think of your mind like a house. What you show to the world is the living room, clean, bright, socially acceptable. But beneath it, there's a basement. And in that basement are the parts of yourself you were told not to show, the anger you weren't allowed to express, the opinions you were shamed for, the emotions you were told were too much. That's where your shadow lives. And most people keep that basement door locked tight. They smile, perform, say the right things, act agreeable. But deep down, that locked door starts to shake. And the longer you ignore it, the more violently it tries to break free. We're all taught from a very young age which parts of ourselves are welcome and which parts are not. Maybe you were praised for being quiet, so you learned to silence your voice. Maybe you were punished for crying, so you learned to bottle pain. Maybe you were taught to be strong all the time, so you buried every sign of vulnerability. All of those discarded parts didn't disappear. They became your shadow. And here's the uncomfortable truth. The more you try to be a good person, the more powerful your shadow becomes. Because now, it's not just hidden, it's hungry. Have you ever overreacted and thought, where did that come from? Or said something in anger and felt like you weren't even in control of yourself? That was your shadow breaking through. It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't wait for the perfect time. It shows up when you're exhausted, stressed, or triggered. It hijacks your emotions, sabotages your relationships, and clouds your judgment. Not because it hates you, but because it wants to be seen, because it needs to be seen. Carl Jung didn't create the shadow to scare people. He named it to free them. Because once you can name something, you can work with it. You can integrate it. You can stop running. But first, you have to understand the cost of hiding. The longer you pretend it's not there, the more it controls your life from behind the curtain. You think you're making decisions, but really, you're reacting. You think you're in charge, but really, your unacknowledged emotions are. From the moment you were born, you were taught who to be. Not who you are, who to be. Be polite. Be good. Be strong. These words sound harmless, even helpful, but underneath them hides a message that changes everything. Who you are is not enough. So, you adapt. You smile when you're hurting. You nod when you disagree. You say, "I'm fine," when your soul is screaming. Not because you're fake, but because you were trained to survive by being what others expected. And slowly, something subtle but dangerous happens. You lose sight of the person you were before the world told you who to be. Most people are not themselves. They are a performance, a collection of roles layered on top of each other, like armor. At work, they wear the productive mask. At home, the agreeable one. Online, the clever one. In public, the quiet one. But in private, silence. A numbness. An aching feeling they can't quite explain. Jung called this disconnection from the self inauthentic living. It's the emotional fatigue that creeps in when your soul knows you're acting, when your true self is trapped behind a mask, silently begging to breathe. You've probably felt it. That hollow sense after a conversation where you said all the right things, but none of them were true. That cold guilt after agreeing to something you didn't want to do. That tightness in your chest after laughing at something that actually hurt. That's not just social discomfort. That's the cost of abandonment. Not abandonment from others, abandonment from yourself. And here's where it gets darker. The longer you play these roles, the harder it is to tell where the act ends and you begin. The masks don't just hide you, they replace you. And without realizing it, you become a stranger to your own soul. You don't know what you actually feel anymore. You don't know what you believe. You don't know what you want. You wake up one day and realize you've built an entire life that doesn't even belong to you. A job you hate, a relationship that drains you, friends who don't know the real you because you've never shown them. Jung warned that this is how the shadow takes over. When your conscious self becomes weak, your unconscious steps in to fill the void. You're no longer choosing. You're reacting. You're no longer living. You're performing. And here's the tragic part. No one notices. Because everyone around you is doing the same. You're surrounded by mirrors, each one reflecting a version of themselves they don't even recognize. And in that sea of performances, the truth becomes dangerous. That's why when someone starts to wake up, to question, to confront, to pull off the mask, they're often rejected. Not because they're wrong, but because they make everyone else feel exposed. And that's the cost of meeting yourself. Discomfort, loneliness, rupture. But what's the cost of never meeting yourself? Everything. If you want to know what's hiding in your shadow, don't look in the mirror. Look at your relationships, the people you love, the ones you avoid, the ones who make your skin crawl. Because every relationship is a reflection, a surface that shows you what you've buried. That's why love feels so intense, and why heartbreak feels so cruel. It's not just about the other person. It's about the part of you they wake up. Carl Jung called this projection. The idea that the things we deny in ourselves, our fears, flaws, insecurities, get projected onto other people. You think you're angry at your partner for being controlling, but deep down, you're angry at yourself for giving your power away. You think your friend is selfish for setting boundaries, but really, they remind you of the part of you that never learned to say no. Projection isn't always obvious. It hides in blame, in irritation, in admiration. Sometimes you idolize someone not because they're perfect, but because they carry a part of you you're afraid to own. The shadow thrives in closeness because intimacy creates mirrors. And most people don't like what they see. That's why relationships feel like war zones when you're emotionally unaware. Every disagreement becomes a battle for identity. Every silence becomes a threat. Every rejection becomes confirmation of a wound you've been carrying since childhood. And here's the thing. The shadow doesn't care how long you've known someone. It will hijack your reactions the moment something unresolved is triggered. Let's say someone you trust suddenly pulls away, doesn't text back, cancels plans. The shadow doesn't say, "They're busy." It says, "You're not important." It echoes your deepest fear: abandonment, rejection, invisibility, and before you know it, you're spiraling. Not because of what happened, but because of what you made it mean. The event is neutral. The meaning is yours. And that meaning came from the part of you that hasn't healed. When you don't meet your shadow, it walks into your relationships and makes decisions for you. It picks partners who replicate old wounds. It sabotages healthy connections because they feel unfamiliar. It clings to toxic ones because chaos feels normal. You're not weak. You're operating from pain that never got language. And relationships become the battlefield where that pain plays out again and again. But there's a shift that happens slowly, painfully, beautifully when you begin to recognize this. When you stop blaming others and start asking yourself, why does this hurt so much? What part of me is this activating? That question, simple as it sounds, is the door to freedom. Because the moment you ask it, you've reclaimed your awareness. You've stopped being a puppet and become an observer. You're no longer reacting blindly. You're watching. You're learning. You're waking up. And once you're awake, even the most painful relationships become teachers. Even the people who hurt you start revealing your unfinished stories. That doesn't make their actions right, but it makes your healing possible. And that is where the shadow begins to lose power, when you stop fearing it and start learning from it. In a world that thrives on surface impressions, pretending has become a survival skill. From the moment you wake up and open your phone, you're entering a stage. Scroll through your feed. Look at the filters, the highlights, the carefully chosen captions. What you're seeing isn't life, it's performance. And the audience isn't just other people. It's the version of yourself you think the world will accept. Society doesn't ask you to be real. It asks you to be consistent, predictable, useful, easy to digest. That's why most people become characters of themselves, smiling on camera while breaking on the inside, nodding in meetings while their soul goes numb, posting quotes about self-worth while secretly hoping for someone to text back. And the scary part? The world rewards it. The more polished you become, the more likes you get. The more agreeable you are, the more you're promoted. The more you hide your truth, the more you're told you're doing well. We don't live in a culture of authenticity. We live in a culture of branding. And when your identity becomes a brand, the shadow grows in silence. Because there's no space for real anger, real sadness, real vulnerability. You don't get applause for breaking down. You get penalized, unfollowed, ignored, labeled as too much or not stable. So what do people do? They push those parts underground. They curate. They sanitize. And in doing so, they abandon themselves, slowly, beautifully, invisibly. The system doesn't want your wholeness. It wants your usefulness. That's why people who say no are labeled difficult. Why people who take time off are seen as lazy. Why people who speak uncomfortable truths are pushed out, silenced, or discredited. It's not personal. It's systemic. Because your truth isn't profitable. Your conformity is. Carl Jung warned about this. He saw society as a kind of unconscious machine, one that doesn't care about your inner world. It only cares about the roles you play. The moment you step out of that role, you become a threat. Not because you're dangerous, but because you're free. And freedom is disruptive. Think about how we raise children. We don't teach them to feel. We teach them to behave. Don't cry. Say thank you. Smile. From early on, we're conditioned to manage perception instead of emotion. And that training never leaves. It just evolves. Be productive. Be strong. Be likable. Even if you're dying inside. But here's the truth. No one says out loud, the real you, the raw, messy, unfinished you, isn't marketable. You can't package it into 30-second clips or turn it into a motivational quote. You can't monetize depth. And because of that, the world never asks for it. It trains you to hide and then applauds you for being invisible. You can only bottle something for so long before it bursts. And your emotions, especially the ones you've denied, dismissed, or disguised, are no exception. Repression doesn't erase what you feel. It stores it, packs it away behind the smile, buries it beneath the "I'm fine," holds it back with phrases like "I'm over it," and "it doesn't matter." But inside, your shadow keeps score. It remembers everything. Every grudge swallowed, every truth silenced, every need ignored. And when the pressure builds high enough, it doesn't ask for permission to come out. It explodes. That explosion doesn't always look like screaming or slamming doors. Sometimes it's insomnia. Sometimes it's burnout. Sometimes it's self-sabotage, missing deadlines, picking fights, destroying relationships you secretly care about. Sometimes it's isolation, numbness, that empty stare in the mirror where you don't recognize yourself anymore. It's the body saying what the mouth wouldn't. And for most people, that's the moment they finally say, something's wrong. But nothing is suddenly wrong. It's been wrong for a very long time. It's just that the shadow got tired of waiting to be heard. Carl Jung believed that what we suppress doesn't disappear. It festers. He warned that the shadow, when ignored, doesn't just linger quietly. It grows in power, feeding off denial. Until one day, it no longer whispers, it screams. And what looks like a meltdown is often just the truth trying to surface. Have you ever seen someone snap, seemingly out of nowhere? A parent who's always calm suddenly erupts. A friend who's always cheerful stops returning calls. A colleague who's high-performing suddenly quits everything. We're quick to say they're acting out of character. But maybe they're finally acting in character. Maybe that mask was just too heavy, and it cracked. Maybe the version of themselves they'd been performing finally collapsed under its own weight. We live in a culture that celebrates endurance. keep going. Push through. Be strong. But no one tells you that constant self-abandonment is not resilience. It's emotional erosion. You don't break because you're weak. You break because you've spent years patching wounds with silence. And eventually, the silence turns toxic. It poisons your peace, distorts your thinking, until you're not even sure what's real anymore. But here's the twist no one expects. That breaking point, it might be the most honest moment of your life, because that's when the performance finally stops. That's when the real you, the hurt you, the angry you, the exhausted you, finally gets a voice. And yes, it's messy. It's terrifying, but it's also sacred. Because what if that breakdown is actually a breakthrough? What if the chaos isn't a failure, but a signal? A message from your inner world saying, enough. It's time. What if everything falling apart isn't the end, but the beginning of something more real? That's the question we'll ask next. Carl Jung didn't believe in perfection. He believed in integration. And the most important journey of your life, he said, isn't about reaching enlightenment or chasing happiness. It's about becoming who you already are, beneath the layers of fear, performance, and conditioning. He called this process individuation, not self-improvement, not positivity. Individuation, the painful, powerful unfolding of the self. At its core, individuation means making peace with contradiction. You are both light and dark, kind and cruel, confident and afraid. The world teaches you to deny your flaws, to hide them, bury them, fix them. But Jung taught the opposite. He believed that what you deny owns you, and what you integrate empowers you. So if you've spent your whole life trying to fix yourself, maybe that's why you still feel broken. Because your wholeness isn't hiding in perfection. It's hiding in the parts of you you've tried to erase. Imagine your mind as a house with many rooms. Some rooms you've decorated and proudly show to guests. Your talents, your kindness, your sense of humor. But other rooms you keep locked. Your jealousy, your fears, your wounds. Individuation means unlocking those rooms, not to destroy what's inside, but to understand it, to listen, to reclaim it. Because every part of you, yes, even the parts you're ashamed of, once had a reason to exist. They were created to protect you. They were born in survival. And now, they're waiting to be welcomed home. The shadow doesn't disappear with awareness. It transforms. When you see your anger and stop judging it, it becomes boundaries. When you acknowledge your envy, it becomes a compass, showing you what you truly desire. When you sit with your sadness, it becomes compassion. This is the heart of individuation, the alchemy of self-awareness, turning pain into wisdom, turning reaction into choice. But make no mistake, this path is not clean or linear. It's not a checklist or 10-step plan. It's a descent into the unknown. Jung often used the metaphor of the hero's journey, not the kind where you slay dragons, but the kind where you realize the dragon is part of you. And the goal isn't to kill it. The goal is to stop being afraid of it. You don't become whole by rising above your darkness. You become whole by descending into it and returning with the truth. That's what individuation really is. Returning, reclaiming, remembering. It's the quiet revolution of becoming real, piece by piece, shadow by shadow. It's waking up to your own depth, even when the world begs you to stay on the surface. Most people will never take this path, not because they're weak, but because it's lonely. It's confronting. It's hard to explain to others why you're letting go of your old identity, why you're choosing solitude over noise, silence over approval, truth over comfort. But if you've made it this far, maybe you're already walking it. The shadow is sneaky. It doesn't shout. It whispers. It doesn't show up dressed like a villain. It hides inside your habits, your reactions, your silence. Spotting it isn't about hunting yourself down. It's about watching yourself differently, gently, curiously, without judgment. Start here. Notice your triggers. What makes you overreact? What kind of people irritate you instantly? Who do you judge without even knowing why? Those moments are not random. They're not about them. They're about you. The shadow speaks through emotional spikes. If someone's confidence annoys you, ask yourself, what part of me feels small around them? If someone's boundary makes you angry, ask, why do I feel threatened by their no? Your strongest reactions usually come from parts of yourself you've denied. Now ask yourself this: what do I pretend not to feel? What do you brush off with a laugh? What truth sits in your throat but never makes it into words? Maybe you say, I'm just tired, when you're really feeling hopeless. Maybe you say, it's not a big deal, when you're actually hurting. Your shadow lives in those emotional edits, the ones you've been practicing for years. Another clue? Look at your patterns. Do you keep attracting the same type of friend or partner? Do you sabotage progress right when things start going well? That's not coincidence. That's your shadow pulling you toward familiar pain. Because pain you've known feels safer than peace you don't trust. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. But here's what's most important. Spotting your shadow is not about blaming yourself. It's about understanding yourself. This is not punishment. It's freedom. You are not bad because you feel jealous. You're not weak because you get angry. You're not broken because you avoid discomfort. You're human. And your shadow isn't here to destroy you. It's trying to wake you up. So begin small. Journal after moments where you feel emotionally thrown off. Write what happened. Then write what you really felt. Ask yourself, what did this moment reflect back to me about who I am or who I pretend to be? Over time, you'll see the threads. And with awareness comes choice. You won't get it perfect, but you don't have to. If you're still watching, if you're still here, you're already brave enough to begin. There's a moment in every inner journey where the mirror stops flattering you. When the image looking back isn't the polished version you've shown to the world, but the real one, the scared one, the angry one, the ashamed one. And this is where most people turn back, not because they're weak, but because what they see feels unbearable. You've been taught to reject this version of yourself, to flinch at it, to hide it, maybe even to hate it. But Carl Jung believed that what you fear the most in yourself is not there to ruin you. It's there to return you to wholeness. The shadow only becomes a monster when it's been locked away too long. It grows teeth when it's been silenced. But what if it doesn't need to be slayed? What if it just needs to be seen? Imagine a child locked in a room for years. They've been ignored, misunderstood, unloved. When the door finally opens, they don't greet you with a smile. They scream, they throw things, they rage, not because they're evil, but because they've forgotten what it feels like to be safe. That's your shadow. It's not trying to hurt you. It's trying to tell you, you left me behind, and now it wants to come home. This part of the work is not about affirmations or positivity. It's about emotional honesty. It's about feeling the things you've spent years avoiding: shame, grief, anger, regret, and realizing they won't destroy you. They'll free you. The monster in the mirror only terrifies you because you've forgotten it was once your ally. The part of you that spoke up, fought back, cried out when you needed protection. When you stop running, you realize something strange. The shadow softens. It loses its edge. Because finally, you're listening, not arguing, not suppressing, just listening. You don't fix the shadow. You witness it. You don't defeat the monster. You sit beside it. And in that moment of stillness, of surrender, you realize this truth. What you thought was your darkness is actually your depth. So now the question is this: if the real you finally stood up, who would walk away? And would you have the strength to let them? If you're ready to take this further, beyond self-awareness into true emotional control, watch the next video. Become cold, not cruel, the art of strategic detachment. Because being whole is just the beginning. Learning to hold that wholeness without flinching, that's what comes next. I'll see you there.